I would say another thing to think about, 2, 3, 4 years in advance, bring in some professionalized advisors because, you know, understanding how to grow a company, understanding how to organize operations, how to scale, how to delegate responsibilities, and not have it all be just you, and all about you. You need to have a company that's developing a brand. You need to have a company that's able to scale. You need to have a company that has more than just you at the helm, so that you're not just selling a job.
Hello and welcome to the Attorney Post, where we give you the inside scoop with top attorneys in their field. And now, here's our host, Justin West.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Attorney Post, where we discuss what's going on in various facets of the law with lawyers at the top of their game to help you navigate the various ins and outs of legal fields and jurisdictions. Because, as I always say, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. Today, I'm very pleased to be joined by Tabber Benedict, who runs Benedict Advisors PLLC. He is based in and around the New York City area. Tabber, how are you doing today?
Doing very well and happy to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, we have actually already been talking for like 40 minutes, so you guys are going to get us, our voices might come out in the middle of this. If so, I apologize. We've been having a good conversation beforehand, and that's just how it is when you have, some people can just talk and talk and talk. I've had some guests that are very, very very dry, we'll just say. And I've had some guests that are very, very engaging. I suspect that this is going to be a fun and engaging conversation. I always look forward to that. Before we get started, I'm going to jump over and take a look at your site. Again, this is Benedict Advisors. That is Benedict Advisors PLLC. Complex matters, tenacious advocates, strategic solutions, focusing on things like corporate mergers and acquisitions and all sorts of things in the New York City area. We're going to deal in all of this today. As always, we will have his information down below, particularly his website, and he does have a contact form and everything else. So if you want to reach out to him, you can get in touch via his website. I don't know if he has a phone number right now or not that's on the site. You can probably Google him on Benedict Advisors, and we'll get his number in there if he has a number that you'll call. But at the very least, you can contact him via the contact form and email and everything else. So we're going to be talking about what Tabber does in detail here very shortly. Before we do that, however, we are going to jump over and read from our sponsors, and our first sponsor today is SearchSift. Do you know why in the legal space some clicks can cost $100, $200, even $500 or more in personal injury? It's not because Google has a magic let's make things expensive for attorneys button. It's because Google Ads is an auction. When 5 or 10 or 20 law firms are all bidding on the same high-intent search, car accident lawyer, divorce lawyer, criminal lawyer, etc., the price goes up. And this works not just in law, but in roofing, plumbing, etc. The price goes up and up and up the more people are willing to pay. But here's what most firms and businesses miss out on. Before somebody ever clicks an ad, before they ever see the map pack, before they ever choose a law firm, Google's already shaping the search with autocomplete suggestions, and that's where SearchSift comes in. SearchSift helps position your firm earlier in the search journey inside the predictive search so that when people make that decision, they see you and only you. Instead of fighting after the search happens for position on page 1, you influence search before the click ever happens. And the neat thing about SearchSift is you don't pay just to show up. You only pay when somebody actually clicks on your website from a search that they have done. So if you're tired of paying for auction prices for every lead and you want half price or less clicks coming in from Google, the exact same clicks from Google and Bing, maybe it's time to stop fighting where everyone else is fighting. Visit SearchSift, that's SYFT, searchsift.com, and see what your market looks like. Our second sponsor is Groove Pages, or Groove Funnels, whatever you want to call them. This is Groove Funnels 2.0. Running an online business shouldn't mean paying for 12 different tools before you've ever even made a sale, and that's where Groove comes in. Groove gives entrepreneurs, creators, and marketers one platform for funnels, checkouts, emails, memberships, webinars, e-commerce, blogs, affiliates, automation, and more. There's no credit card. There's no trial that suddenly flips on. There's no monthly software bill to get started. Groove is actually free to use, legitimately, truly, honestly free to use. And they only earn a small percentage fee when you sell something on your website. So stop duct taping your businesses together with expensive subscriptions. Visit theattorneypost.com/groove to sign up free today, completely free for life. Groove, theattorneypost.com/groove. And again, we'll always have links to our sponsors down below. All righty, let me get those out of the way here and jump back over. So I am talking with Tabber today, and he is a corporate M&A, mergers and acquisition attorney whose work focuses on complex transactions, mergers and acquisitions, early stage companies, and strategic legal counsel for growing businesses. His firm helps founders, entrepreneurs, investors, and lower middle market companies think through the legal, financial, and strategic decisions that can shape shape growth, risk, valuation, and eventual exit opportunities. We're going to talk about what business owners often misunderstand about legal strategy, what founders should be thinking about long before they sell or raise capital, and how sophisticated deal counsel can help companies avoid expensive mistakes before they even become deal breakers. However, I'm sure that there's a lot more I could say, and I barely only scratched the surface of who you are. So my very first question, Tabber, to you is just this: who are you, right? What did I miss in the introduction? What should people know about you that wasn't mentioned?
Well, very nice to be here again, Justin. Thank you very much for all of that. I really appreciated it. So I am Tabber B. Benedict is my name, and I am a corporate M&A attorney based here in New York City. I'm a managing partner of a firm that's a full service boutique firm. And what that means is that we have more partners and associates. We all work remotely. We have lean teams. We can move fast, and we give a lot of partner level attention to all of the matters that we work on. And most of my background and experience has been in mergers and acquisitions, and corporate law and capital markets. But I've also handled some other areas that are very interesting and complex. And so when you think about me, I would just like to think, hey, if there's something complex that you're trying to do, accomplish, grow a business, sell a business, or, kind of take care of some disputes that are happening, you can come to our firm and we can help you from a partner level.
Awesome. Well, that sort of answers my second question, but go ahead and give me the full pitch for your firm. Who are your ideal clients? Where do they come from? Why are they choosing to work with you?
So our ideal clients are really all over the map in terms of industries. We don't focus on one particular vertical, but they're companies that are growing, companies that are looking to sell themselves, companies that are looking to buy, funds that are looking to buy, and then independent sponsors and sponsors, as well as high net worth individuals and others who are doing deals or transactions. Companies that are also looking to raise capital, companies that are looking to raise debt financing, which we can help both on the legal and on actually arranging for the debt financing. And it's really across many different areas, because from the beginning stages, startup, through the growth phase to the exit, we can really help companies across the board. So I would say ideal demographic of clients is kind of broad, but we work with private equity funds, we work with independent sponsors, and then companies that are, I would say, lower middle market companies that are looking to sell at or below $100 million. Any companies like that would be a great fit for what we're doing here.
Very cool. So let me ask you this question, and I'm always curious because everyone has a different trajectory. But what got you into law? Did you grow up? Were you the nerdy kid that always played lawyer when everyone else was playing GI Joe or whatever, right? Or did you always know you want to be a lawyer? Did you kind of stumble into this? What led you into law, and then what got you into this particular aspect of the law?
I think, life is so interesting because when at least when I was a kid, things didn't always go to the way I planned them, believe it or not. When I was, in my younger years, I really was into sports and playing on teams. And I really was into that. And I was really focused on sports. I worked really hard in school, but I wasn't the nerdiest kid, but I was also, one of the people that really took that seriously. What happened with me is that in middle school, I had an internship with at a law firm, and one of the lawyers was a judge in the local area, and I kind of shadowed him, and he was this really incredible figure, like an old school lawyer, like how you might imagine them, I guess, when you're growing up in upstate New York. That's where I grew up. Mm-hmm. And he took me under his wing and treated me with respect, and he was a very well-spoken, articulate gentleman, and I saw the kind of respect he got in the community. He was really a leader in the community, and he did different things, not just for profit, but also for charitable organizations and things like that. And he really inspired me. And I think that's the person. His name was Patrick Maney. I don't think he's alive anymore, but I'll always remember him. He was he was really an important, inspiring person in my life, and he is the person that inspired me to go into law. Now, when I first decided to go into law, I also had an interest in getting into politics at some point. But when I was in college, I did an off-campus study program at Washington, and I interned at the White House and on the Hill. And I didn't like a lot of the things that I saw behind the scenes, especially with regards to campaign finance. They would say that they were for reform, and then behind the scenes, they would be taking from lobbyists and sort of doing the opposite of what they were saying they're going to do for people. I didn't like
Politicians
that.
pandering and lying, get out of here. No.
And believe it or not, I
Next, you're
was
going to tell me the sky's blue. Come on.
yeah. But when you're 18, 19, 20, right? Like you can be a little naive, and I had a little bit of that naivete, right? And it woke me up to the realities of the way things actually work. And so I decided I didn't want to be a part of that. And I decided that instead, if I was going to do things that would influence policy, it would be from the side of maybe being the one that makes enough money to help support the causes that I want to be a part of, or maybe to give to the nonprofits or charitable organizations that I support. And I decided that I also was excited by, and I always was really interested in living in New York City. I love the energy, the fact that there's always something going on. Actually, there's thousands of things that are always going on. And I like that energy, especially with regards to business. And so I focused mostly on corporate law, and that led me to Columbia Law School. Although I got into both Harvard and Columbia, I decided to go to Columbia based partly on the strength of their corporate negotiations programs there, but also because of a commitment I made to a mentor of mine who at the time was one of the top executives at Goldman Sachs. So here I am.
That's awesome. Not a lot of people get a chance to turn down Harvard. So that's
Yeah.
that's kind of impressive.
I always question it. I always am thinking, was it the right decision? Wasn't it the right decision? And I think given my area of focus, it was the right decision. Not enough of a gain for living in a different city and having lived in New York City since 1999. It's my home, and I love it.
So you lived in New York City in the wake of September 11th. What was that like?
So I was at law school, and I woke up, and obviously not expecting anything to be happening. And I was just more concerned about the fact that I was running about 2 to 3 minutes late. Yes, I am that persnickety even then, for a class. And I lived at the time in Hell's Kitchen in Manhattan, and I put on TV while I was getting ready, and I heard something was happening, but I, of course, was still diligent and went up to Columbia Law School and went to the class. And I found out as I was walking in that it had been canceled, as had all classes, because a number of my classmates had parents who had died. And a lot of people that go to Columbia Law School, believe it or not, are also from New York City or around New York City. It's not like a local school, that's for sure. A lot of people from around the world, but there were enough people in my class who, and some people that were family or friends of professors and administration. It was really shocking to see what happened. It was really sad what happened. I knew people who, again, family members who had died. Not in my family, luckily for me, but I was there for my friends, and I comforted people who had been directly affected by having family members. When I went back down, by the way, the subways were shut down, and a lot of traffic was cordoned off and not allowed to be in Manhattan at that time because of what was going on and the security efforts. And I had to, I think I walked actually all the way from West 116th all the way down to West 51st Street, which is a pretty good walk in Manhattan. And when I came home, it's a long walk. Yeah, it's a long walk. But in New York, it sometimes doesn't feel like a long walk because there's so much going on that you can look at on your way. But anyway, I got down to Hell's Kitchen area, and I I could see the smoke, first of all, from Morningside Heights, which is almost all the way north on a northernmost part of Manhattan. But then when I got down to Hell's Kitchen, I decided that I wanted to see what Times Square was like. And I walked over to Times Square and there was no one in Times Square, which I had never seen before in my life. It reminded me of those zombie movies where eventually there's so many people have been killed that there's just areas where there's just no one around. It kind of
Absolutely.
felt like that.
Yeah.
Um, and it,
I
and
am
it,
led.
there was one police car, but no one was in it, and it was parked on a sidewalk, and there were no people around at all. And it was really a somber, tough time for everyone. And I just remember thinking, like, now what?
Yeah.
What's going to happen now? Because at that time, right, is there going to be a bomb? Is there going to be an attack? Is there going to be, we didn't know. And at that time, it really did bring everyone together for that brief moment. And now looking back at that time and thinking about how unified we were in some ways, um, it's sad in some ways where a lot of society is now. But that aside, that was a tough time for a lot of people in law school because again, direct personal connections. And I had friends outside of law school, same thing. I was worried actually at that. This is an interesting side note. I was dating a woman at the time who lived in Hoboken, and she regularly took the subway underneath the World Trade Center. And so I was really worried for her safety. I thought she could have been one of the people that was underground when that happened. And luckily, she was running late and she didn't make it on time. And so she was safe. And that was like my number one concern, calling and calling and not being able to reach her because a lot of the lines were not, open. Finally, I found out that she was okay. And that was a great relief for me. That was the one person I knew that could have died. So yeah.
Fair enough. So let's talk a little more about your career. You have been practicing law for a while. One of my favorite questions to ask people, and this can always go in various directions. I think I know what we're going to talk about, but I'll let you steer it the way you want to steer it. I'm a firm believer that you step up to bat enough times and you're going to strike out. Nobody bats 1,000. And I'm sure in your professional career, in some capacity, you've had failures, you've had setbacks, but which one of those that stands out to you that you or what was it, what happened, and what have you learned from it, and how have you carried that forward to make your life, your practice, other people's lives better?
Absolutely happy to answer that question. Although, it's tough to talk about, but in my career, and working on deals in the aggregate, the value of the deals I've worked on in my career is north of $75 billion. And I've worked across continents and on international teams, and I've been on deals that are on the front page of every newspaper. But while I was doing that work, mostly mergers and acquisitions, I developed a drinking problem and I abused alcohol. And as a result of that, I had some really severe consequences that happened. I ended up losing my law license, and then later getting readmitted. I got sober, and it really changed the perspective that I had about the career. I started volunteering and speaking at DWI victim impact panels, rehab facilities, hospitals, schools, detox centers, and I'm now on the committee for the Lawyers Assistance Program in the New York City Bar Association. And what we do is we help legal professionals, lawyers, judges, administrators, paralegals, law students, anyone sort of connected with the legal industry, get or stay sober. I'm very happy to report that I've now been sober for over 13 and a half years. I try to use my experience. The only reason why I'm really open about my experience is because I'm hoping that maybe it helps another person, professional or otherwise, either get sober or stay sober. And I know that in the profession of law, for example, there's like almost a 33% higher incidence of addiction and mental health issues than in the general population. And I think that's partly because of the way that we're trained, which feeds a really active mind, let's just say. And over the years, I've learned healthy habits to use to sort of quiet the mind at the end of the day after a long working day where we're thinking about a million different things, getting a bunch of things done for clients, and facing the kind of typical pressures of that kind of profession. So that was a major, I would say, a failing of mine. But on the other hand, I'm in a place now where I think I've used it to help other people, especially other lawyers, other bankers, other professionals, and then other people that have gotten into trouble. And I think this has made me a better lawyer. It's made me certainly more effective. I have a much healthier lifestyle, and I take health and fitness very seriously, and have for the last, especially the last like 12, 13 years. And so that's part of my story as well. And happy to talk about that with anyone actually who hears this and who wants to get sober. They should feel free to reach out to me too. By the way, I don't normally give out my phone number because, believe it or not, because I'm also an investor and I'm also in the process of buying businesses. I get a ton of inquiries for money, in various ways, as well as political contributions and all that. So I prefer people to email me to set things up, or they can text me. But the problem with giving numbers is sometimes people have that drive to call, and then I end up not picking up. So I don't want to do that. And so I like to be responsive. So my email address is actually on my screen right now. People can use that, and it can be, like I said, it could be for professional reasons, for business reasons, or if again, for people that want to get sober, feel free to reach out to me.
And for those of you listening, that's Tabber, Tabber, at Benedict Advisors PLLC.com. Tabber at Benedict Advisors PLLC.com. We may include that in the description below. The benefit of that is it's easier for people to find, but the drawback is there are people that just scrape things, and I don't want people to, unnecessarily scrape it. I want to reward people who want to talk to you and who have listened to the podcast and gotten to this point. So I'll probably not put it in the description box, and I'll just let people, if they really want to know who you are, they're willing to talk to you, they'll have heard this part, and then they'll know how to spell it. So Tabber at Benedict Advisors PLLC.com. Okay, so the flip side, you've dealt with $75 billion in various deals, which is a staggeringly crazy number. It's hard to wrap one's head around. I work with a number of law firms in the personal injury space in my professional career, and I've worked with law firms that have helped, win over $1 billion in money for their clients. And I'm like, man, that's a huge number, because a lot of them are like over 300 million, over 400 million, and then you're like over $1 billion, like, wow, that's a lot. And then you just come here nonchalantly $75 billion, but you're dealing with multi-million dollar businesses on a regular basis, right? So I'm sure you step up to bat. It's not always a success, but it's not always not, right? I'm sure you've had some great successes in your legal career, Tabber. What's one or two of the things in your career that you're the most proud of?
Yeah, so one of the things that I've been lucky to have come to me are these really cool, complex deals. And I'm going to mention 3 examples, if that's okay. I'll try to be very brief. I promise it's not going to triple the amount of time it takes me.
3 hours later.
Yeah. So one of them was the purchase by Ace of the business lines in Hong Kong and Korea of New York Life. And the reason why I'm proud of that one, it was only a $425 million deal. It was only a $425 million deal back when that was real money, I guess. And you know what? It involved 40 people. I was the M&A lead. So I felt like I was sort of the quarterback of this team that was across, I think it was 4 different time zones, because insurance deals are complex. And so there's different aspects that are behind the scenes being done to structure things the proper way as you lead up to a signing or a closing. And I think so for that reason, leading a large team, coordinating all different specialized areas, the business side, working with the bankers, who I believe on that deal was Goldman Sachs, and getting it done. That was one of my better successes on the large scale. And then I would say there was another thing that I did, and that for Ace actually, working with them, helping to lead that, which was the redomestication from the Bahamas to Zurich, Switzerland. Even though that wasn't an M&A deal, it was like an M&A deal in the sense that there were probably, I think, about in that case, 500 deliverables, and just navigating like as a project manager, as like a good corporate and M&A lawyer, where you have to sort of like, be a project manager. Same thing, working with a team. In that case, I think it was over 100 people, helping to do these complex things that you have to do, to move a multi-billion-dollar international insurance company, mostly focused at the time, although spreading across different verticals, property and casualty, from an offshore to a jurisdiction that maybe has a better reputation with analysts, better reputation in the business community. So those are two of the great successes. But I know this will sound strange, but we also work with people, smaller clients, right? And so one of my other most favorite matters was a litigation matter, commercial litigation matter, but it was before there was actually there was litigation, but my role was mostly negotiating and like trying to avoid there being protracted litigation, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And on client demand, I worked with this client very closely. We got the lawsuit, we got it settled. We got it settled for an amount that he could handle. And I think we saved both sides hundreds of thousands of dollars. So even though that was a small matter, right? Not billions, hundreds of thousands. To me, it was just as important as those multi-billion-dollar deals that I've worked on, because we were able to help the client, and we actually did something that helped, in a way, both sides come together. And actually, I'd like to mention one other item. There was a dispute. It didn't turn into litigation. When we came in, there was an amount that was being threatened to be sued. We came in and again took more of a business-minded approach. The business relationship was preserved. There was a tiny amount that crossed hands actually in favor of our client, international client, by the way. And now that's one of their top 3 clients in their business. So not only did we resolve a matter, we helped them actually keep one of their top business clients. So I think those are several of the successes that I've had. There have been many more, but I think that shows kind of the spectrum of from larger to more lower middle market, yet still really important to me and the partners here.
That's awesome. No, that's really good. And it paints a picture of a very wide range of businesses that you guys can work with. And I think that's awesome because, I'm sure that there is a business too small, Sally's lemonade stand on the corner maybe, but in general, it sounds like you guys are a really good firm for a whole host of people until you're in like the Fortune 500 or above, maybe. I don't even know, but like that's really neat to hear. So, I'm going to ask you one other question. This is one of my favorite questions to ask. And it's only this. I find that attorneys tend to encounter a lot of absurdity in their day-to-day life. And I'm sure that, especially practicing the type of law that you do in an area as big and vast as New York City, you have probably encountered some of the most absurd things imaginable. So what's one or two of the things you've encountered that you would just say are some of the weirdest, strangest, most absurd things you've encountered in your practice of law?
Yeah, and these are going to be big law war stories. This is the segment of this podcast that's the section would say big law war stories. I have actually 2 or 3 that I'll tell you about because each is interesting and funny and wow, just so illustrative of like big law life that I think a lot of the big law people out there, if they're listening, will really appreciate this. I don't know what who's listening to this, but maybe even people who just want to learn about big law, they'll appreciate sort of like the underside of it. So I just want to say off the bat that I'm extremely grateful for my big law training at White and Case and Schulte Roth and some other law firms. Invaluable, usually working on 4 to 6 deals at a time, at the least like 3 or 4. The training was invaluable, helps me to help clients, helps me to understand how to take complexity and turn it into a positive on deals. Very grateful for that. Having said that, I saw some things. And I'm not saying it was at the firms I just mentioned, by the way, because I worked at some other firms as well. So one day I was working on 5 deals at once, and it was a Friday night, and it was my my girlfriend's at the time birthday, and I had made a reservation at a restaurant at 9 p.m. It is New York. And also I was I work late. I was working late sometimes until 3 or 4 in the morning. So for me, it was almost like a lunch. And I had gotten her some gifts and I had secretly snuck out during lunch to like bring these gifts to the restaurant to bring out at each course, a different thing. I think the first one was flowers and then so on and so forth. Anyway, I went to the senior associate that I was working with and I said, would it be okay if I go to this dinner and then come back at 11 and then just work through the night to get things done? Mind you, it was a Friday night. And he said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Like it was like this, like I was a doctor saving someone's life and trying to walk away from the operating table. So I have a little bit of an independent streak. And hence I'm not still working at a big law firm. And I went to the senior partner who this was the senior partner's client. And I explained to him everything. I didn't go into the great detail about the rejection. I just said the answer was no. And I asked him, would it be okay if I sneak away for 2 hours on a Friday night to to do this? The partner said, give me 1 second. And he got on the phone. And I don't know how he did this, but he yelled, but I couldn't hear what he was saying at the same time. That's probably part of the absurdity there. And as I walked back to my office, I'm sorry?
When the adults talk in Charlie Brown, like,
yes. It seemed like that to me for a temporary period of time. I walked back to my office and the senior associate comes out and is like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Absolutely. You can go to the dinner and with your girlfriend for her birthday. Absolutely. Absolutely. So that was something that outside of big law, I think most people would think is absurd. And then the absurdity within the absurdity was absurd. In that same type of environment, I'll say, another thing one time that happened that I thought was absurd, even though I'm pretty persnickety myself and care about details, I was in a closing room, like going through final review. Back then, you actually had paper printed out at closings. I know, can you believe it? And I was going through all of that, reviewing it in the old school manner for a closing. And I feel rumblings like there's an earthquake or something. And I hear screaming. It sounded like a woman screaming. I was really worried. So I left the closing conference room and I went down the hall. And it was actually a male partner screaming with this high-pitched scream at another partner about an extra period at the end of a sentence in a one-page letter that went out to the client. Okay, I don't like having little mistakes like that. Okay. Yeah. But the fact that it was the loud screaming and added with the jumping up and down on the floor, that was a little absurd for that in my mind. Now looking back at it, I definitely think it was absurd. At the time, I'm like, it's a little absurd, but it was kind of like a childish behavior kind of situation.
Random related question is there a legal stance on the Oxford comma? Do you guys prefer to use that? Because we're talking about grammatics and typos, right? Like I feel like the Oxford comma makes sense, right? So, and I think it makes things clearer. But what do you think?
It's a big discussion in the industry. Yeah, it's like it's like. And by the way, I always get into arguments with AI about this, I like having the extra comma at the end. I sort of feel like it's a little lazy not to have it. And yet in under the law, you don't have a comma after a name and before LLC, but a lot of people have it. I don't like it because in that case, I think it's unnecessary because I know the default rule about it. Whereas with the Oxford comma, it's not a default rule that there's a comma there. Henceforth, I like the Oxford comma. Boy, I sound really nerdy. But anyway, yes, we do think about that. Yeah, we do think about that. There was another.
Sorry, I didn't rail you.
Yeah, there's one more absurdity that I had wanted to tell you about. but I think what I told you was enough.
Okay.
We can
No, that's
save
totally.
that for another time.
We'll have to have you back on. No, the Oxford comma is one that that's the hill, one of those hills I'll die on. I just think it makes sense. And I'm also a two spaces after a period guy, and I'm told that that's not necessary anymore. But
It
and
used to
I
be
under
like that, and I've stopped not because I want it. I do like the two spaces, but because sometimes it actually does help shorten a little bit in the context of like 100-page document. And for some reason, I like brevity more than I like the two spaces. Even though it's an illusion,
yeah.
and even though it's like such a minor difference. But yes, I agree with you. I agree with you on both of those points.
I was realizing I actually just typed right now because I couldn't remember if I actually do it or not. I actually don't double space anymore. So I think I've adopted the single space and it is more efficient. I get that, but I like the double space rule. And I think a lot of earlier word processors like Microsoft Word would actually auto insert the double space and now everything
Yes,
like auto corrects to a single space. And so you
correct.
just and half the time we're just dictating into our phones anyway and it punctuates it as
When
best
I
it
do the
can.
double space now, I have to do search and replace, and like I put a double space, and then in the replace I put a space, and then that's one of my word processing actions at times.
That'll get you into trouble if you use like Doctor, Dr. period, or Mister. So be on the lookout for
Correct.
that because I've definitely done that as well.
No, no, totally, totally.
Then you
Although I
realize,
also
oh,
have people
shoot,
that now help me with the word processing. So, but this is when I'm really like, I don't want to take that extra time to bring it to an associate or a paralegal or whatever. And then the final thing is I do review things that I personally send out. I review that. Actually, I print it out old school, and read it and have my old school review done that way. Because
yeah,
these things are really valuable things that we're doing, and it literally has our name on it.
yeah.
So, yeah, so it's important to us.
You mentioned AI earlier, and I think we're going to steer the conversation there in a minute. But that is one good use of AI. You can give it your thing and say, all I want you to do is add the double
Correct.
space after every period.
And
And-
Fable, I tested Fable out, Claude's Fable, which is
yeah,
one of the newer. I tested out that this morning, and it came out, and it's doing very, very well, especially relative to 4.7, Opus 4.7.
Mhm.
Um, I think 4.8 ended up being a little bit better, but yeah, now I'm into Fable, and yeah, we definitely use AI for things like that. Exactly. It's very good for due diligence. It's very good for due diligence, because you can check what it's doing by going through those provisions that it finds so that you can verify much more quickly. It does save clients money. So for sure.
I use a lot of AI in what I do. I was an early adopter years ago when it was first coming out, but I will say I haven't used Claude a lot. I hear a lot of people sing its praises. What's your favorite part of Claude versus something like ChatGPT?
I find that when I use Claude and the way that I use it, it kind of makes the highest version of ChatGPT look like free ChatGPT. That's how much the difference is. It's really like a when they came out with 4.6, it was like a huge leap.
Hmm.
I don't know if ChatGPT has caught up, but I've now found that Fable, the newest, again, started using it last night actually, is so good that I have no reason to leave it, which isn't that the reason why they make them better, right? Like they want you to be a loyal customer. So, and I also use Perplexity. And the reason why I do that though is because just in case Claude is down, right? Business risk. Just in case something's down, I want to have an alternative that can fill in the gap.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I used Perplexity a fair amount back in the day. I don't use it as much anymore, but I did like it early on when the other AIs couldn't do this because what it would do is it would search everything on page one of Google, summarize it for you, and give it the steps. I used it at one point. I had to smoke 8 pork butts at the same time, and I had to like make adjustments on the fly. And figuring out how to do that is incredibly difficult. But one of the benefits of
It's
AI is you can
amazing,
really
by the way.
yeah, it's amazing because it can summarize all that data. It can do the calculations.
Tell
It can
us
make
about
the
that
adjustments.
absurdity.
And it did a great job, right? We were able to smoke. We actually were smoking 11 total. I have a smoker that's really tiny. I had a friend that had 8, but it died halfway through the night. And so we were
Oh
having to like,
no.
it was my son's graduation from high school last year. So at the
Oh,
end of last,
amazing. That's very nice of you
and
to have cooked such a great meal.
We're having a big pulled pork festival, more or less. It was him and a bunch of his buddies. So it was a group graduation party. And like, we need to have a lot of meat for this
I
because
actually met the love of my life because of braised pork shoulder. Because I went to
our
a
work
party.
significant other.
Yeah, because I went to an Upper West Side gathering, a private apartment party, not for the drinks because I don't drink, but for the food. And I ended up staying late because one of my friends was late. She ended up coming only because she was helping a friend who was going through a breakup. And
Mhm.
hence we met because of braised pork shoulder and the randomness of life.
Well, there you go. I can get shoulder. So that's awesome. I have to put that on my list of things to eat in the near future. That and a good brisket, man. If you do it right, a good brisket is so good.
Absolutely. I'm big into protein these days, trust me.
My Weber smoker. No. um, let's hear. So, okay, I have a very important question for you. This is maybe the most important question I'll ask you on this whole interview, Tabber. So, I need you to be very focused on this one. Who's your favorite attorney in pop culture, fictional or real?
Oh, wow. What a great question. What a great question. Um, it's not the guys from Suits because it's too light. It's too that would be too light. You know, I think I'm drawn to I don't know what the name I'm not remembering this name very well, but it has Keanu Reeves and Al Pacino.
Oh yeah, the Devil's Advocate.
Yes, for some reason that lawyer and the illustrative, good versus evil battle, right?
Yeah,
That I think is an example of like what we all as humans, as lawyers, we struggle with every day. So I think that was probably my favorite lawyer because of the immense courage he had in the face of, pure evil and uh, unlimited temptation. Let's just
yeah.
say that. And to me, that's a pretty cool thing to be able to do. I like the fact that they had a good lawyer in it.
There you go. That was a good one. That came out when I was in college. I remember watching that one repeatedly. I worked at a Blockbuster Video, if people know what those are, for a couple of years, and we would get screener copies of videos that would come out, and they were great because they were free and they were out
Yes.
like 6 months. When the movie was still in the theaters, we would get them, but they were like black and white at certain points, and they'd say, if you've purchased or rented this, please call 1-800 no copies. I still remember that to this day. But that was one of the movies I had, and it was like, whoa, you got that movie already? So it earned me some cool street cred for having the Devil's Advocate. But I loved that movie back in the day. I haven't actually watched it probably in a decade or so, but I do remember it's a very visceral picture of evil at the end of the day. Like, ooh,
Yes.
wow. Because it's simultaneously repulsive, but also not. And that's kind of the point, right? I
That's
mean,
the point.
evil
Correct.
comes and it's seductive, right? It's not like, hey, you want to go be evil? It's like, hey,
I mean, some evil is like the clown, but like, but
oh yeah,
the really effective evil, to call it effective, yeah, you can call it effective. The most efficient evil is that which is more subtle and sophisticated, and you don't even know it's happening until it's happening to you, right? So yeah, absolutely. That's part of the reason why, again, I like the fact that um he was able, the main protagonist, or one of the main, you could say both of them are, one of the main protagonists. I mean, Al Pacino is just, oh my God, what an amazing, talented man. I think I couldn't hear your sound for a second.
I don't know if my mic is maybe I have a loose connection. It seems like it's cut out like twice now. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
No, I was just saying Al Pacino. He's phenomenal. I'm a big fan of him. I was trying to remember the name of Keanu Reeves' character in that movie, but it's all right. You guys are free to, maybe I'll put a link to the Amazon video down below. You guys can watch it. It's worth it. I mean, it is R-rated. There is some risque stuff in there. Be forewarned to watch it with your kids, but it's
Temptation.
definitely worth watching. So. So
Yep.
let's talk a little bit more about your wheelhouse, Tabber. A lot of business owners think of legal work as just defensive. They think of contracts, they think of compliance, they think of avoiding lawsuits, they think of things
Mm.
like that. How is a legal strategy a growth tool?
Yeah, so one of the best strategies for any business at a certain stage in development, or when it doesn't have the resources to grow organically all the time and it's competing in the market, is to actually buy another business. That's the very basic, high level reason for using M&A as a business strategy to make more money, is that, and I'm not even talking about funds, I'm talking about more strategic acquisitions, right? So, for example, although I didn't represent, in this case, our firm didn't represent the company in the capacity as a law firm. In January, one of my business partners and I helped get for a defense technology company $8 million in 4.5 business days. How did we do that? We have a network of over 400 lenders, funds, high net worth individuals from around the world, through our partnerships and our platform to help people get debt financing. But that aside, that money was used by that company to acquire. That's why they needed the money for an M&A transaction. They used that money to acquire another company that gave it a very thin, like a niche monopoly for a period of time, so to speak, which boosted their cash flows by over 20 million for the year. So imagine being able to boost your cash flows that quickly through one acquisition. And so, that's the number one reason. And then it as a business, right? Most commonly explained through the private equity fund model. It's just a great business because if you have capital to deploy and you can get debt financing, by the way, debt financing and M&A go together like cookies and cream. Look it up. That's definitely a truth that I learned very early on in my career. You can make a lot of money making smart acquisitions and having the ability operationally or in different verticals to grow and scale and professionalize and or improve technologies of target companies for use of actually like going in there, improving, and then later exiting. And so that's the difference also, that we could talk about very briefly between financial buyers, right? Like the private equity funds, independent sponsors, and then typically, although there are some independent sponsors we've recently been working with who have a very different model and much more long term. But and that difference between financial buyers like PE funds versus strategic. Strategic is when you have a company in a certain area and you buy another one because you want to expand market share and you don't want to again have to grow or organically, or maybe it's in a region that you couldn't reach otherwise, right? So that's the number one reason why M&A is such a highly valued area in the law, is because it really serves such an important area in business. I don't know if I answered your question, but I tried to answer like I guess like the top, like there's so many other business reasons, but I think I gave you at least 2 or 3 there that go across different areas of buyers, like different types of buyers, but also that speak to the idea of, again, buying instead of just doing organic growth. Especially like if you are, for example, these technology companies, they have so much money, they have so much in cash flows, although now it's almost all going into data centers and AI. Typically, they would use a portion of that money to acquire technology companies, and it still is, because they don't want to go through the business of growing something from 0 to 1. That's not what a big company, they can make so much money continuing to do what they're doing. They don't want to set aside resources to grow a company from 0 to 1. They'd rather have us, the startup community, do that. And I say that because I've also founded a company. They'd rather have us do the heavy lifting and the hard stuff, climbing the mountain, and then buy us one just before it fully takes off, so they don't have to pay as high of a price. That's another way that these bigger companies, they build a portfolio of companies, even if they're not completely in their wheelhouse. It may be aligned with and strategically important. So that's another thing as well.
Gotcha. Oh, that makes sense.
Was that enough for?
Yeah, I was about the using law as a growth tool, and that's more or less what you just answered. So that's very good. Here's kind of a related note, but also kind of a different note. What are some of the early legal decisions that can either protect or haunt a company later on? Entity structure, equity splits, contracts, employment issues, IP governance, etc. And when a business comes to you, are there businesses that have come to you that you've turned down working with? And if so, what were the red flags?
You're fired. Yes, yes. So I've learned from this because I've gone through cycles where we've taken on too many clients, and then we've gone through cycles where we don't have enough. So it's sort of like, manning the balance, right? So companies in the beginning that don't do good corporate governance is always a red flag because if they have the funding, if they don't have the funding, that, you just can't do it. But like companies that have the funding and yet still don't value legal compliance, doing things and keeping things in good corporate order, that's going to come back to haunt them when they are trying to raise capital at a really high level from institutions. B, when they try to sell themselves and the buyer comes in and looks under the hood and finds a mess and therefore can leverage that for a lower price. Or just walk away because they don't want to deal with the potential liabilities that are inherent with that kind of messiness in the beginning. Those are broadly all the areas. Now, is there a specific? I would say it's usually the case that when they're not doing one thing, they tend to not be being, in compliance in a number of areas. And then I'd say probably the worst things that clients do is they have stakeholders. It's not just them. They have investors, they have employees, they have contractors, and they try to do the legal work themselves or have non-lawyers do the legal work, which is a felony in most states and many states. And that's probably the worst thing that I've seen and usually results in the most messiness, the most problems. It ends up costing them more later. So they're being, in a way, a penny wise, not even a penny wise, a penny foolish and a pound foolish at the same time. And I think, if you're a client, don't try to do legal work yourself. Number one, it's a crime. And number two, it's probably not smart. And even if you're trying to use AI yourself, I guarantee the way that you use AI is not the way that a lawyer with 10 plus years of experience doing M&A or corporate work or tax work or employment work or IP work, that's not how they're using it. I assure you.
And you're not going to catch hallucinates either.
Human verification is really important. I drafted an LOI about a month ago, and it made one of the buyer conditions to closing one of the seller conditions to closing. And of course, the seller would be okay with it not doing something,
Yeah.
So it was not appropriate for that to happen. And I asked it, why did it do that? And it was like, oops. And I'm just saying, like no matter how good the AI, human oversight at this stage is incredibly important. And by the way, AI doesn't have a law license. So just because you use AI doesn't mean that you're off the hook in terms of unauthorized practice of law and committing a crime. And most people use it inappropriately, sharing confidential proprietary information. Very dangerous if you have very important IP to be using AI. Be very careful, even if you think that it's okay, even on the commercial platforms. How you use it is extremely important to protect yourselves and your companies. Have a competent counsel in whatever area you're in help you with that. Or you can contact us.
There you go. You work with people, you work internationally. So if somebody wants to work with you and they're not in New York City, is that a problem at all? Or is it really, that's fine, you can work?
We have such great alliances. When I was working at White & Case, I worked on a number of international transactions. White & Case is one of the leading international law firms in the world. When I worked at ACE, it was an international Fortune 500 company. I had to work on deals across time zones, as I alluded to earlier. I have developed with my partners here and partners of the firm, local counsel in many just different jurisdictions, from India to Ireland and the UK, to Eastern Europe, Western Europe, and in between. And then recently we've been developing in the Middle East, Dubai. And we actually have now a budding partnership with a firm in Hong Kong. So what you do is you use the same model and you find other firms and countries that have a similar model to you. Big law trained, sophisticated, worked at big institutions, branched out on their own. Sometimes the firms we work with are also bigger than us. We've co-counseled with and have proposed co-counseling with AmLaw 100 firms, and other much smaller but still substantial medium-sized firms. So we work across alliances. That's what smaller firms do. But you still get that partner level attention. You still get the lean, lean and fast-moving machine of a boutique that can be very aggressive and get things done very quickly. A lot of times, bureaucracy at those big firms can slow things down, and you end up working with the B team or the C team. Here, you work with partners that have over a decade or more experience, many of whom have been trained at Big Law, and we bring that both in the United States and internationally. In fact, last week one of my Indian law firms came here, and we had dinner at a restaurant in Midtown Manhattan, and had a wonderful discussion about law, business, and the philosophy of building a firm with really good culture. So bless you, by the way. And so, yes, the answer is yes. We have a really excellent set of alliances internationally. Really appreciate all the lawyers that I know around the world. Thank you very much if you're listening.
There you go. So a little more of a practical question. For an owner that thinks, I want to sell my business in like 3 to 5 years, what should they be doing right now? And what makes a company attractive from a buyer's perspective beyond just revenue and profits? And I guess, are there any deal killers that you see regularly occurring in M&A?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, when you're approaching a deal, one of the deal killers is really unrealistic expectations. When you're a seller and you're getting to that point, now I'm going to go back to the years in advance thing in a second, but I just want to talk about this because this I've seen over and over again in the last few years. If you're going into a deal where you're a seller and you're selling your company, and you don't do comparative analysis, you don't have an expert M&A advisor. By the way, we have partners strategically aligned who do M&A advisory and brokerage, both on the Main Street M&A scale and then on larger middle market, lower middle market. So we can also put people in touch with those types of advisors. If you don't do the proper analysis and you have a highfalutin valuation in your mind, it's going to make it impossible to close in this market. It just will. Buyers are smart. Buyers have many resources at their beck and call. They have usually pretty sophisticated advisors in the case of middle market deals and larger. And even many of the lower middle market deals, I would say like 10 million and above, you're not going to be negotiating against someone and get lucky with an ignorant buyer. Don't think that going in, because it's also going to make it really hard to move forward. That's one of the deal killers, I would say, was misaligned expectations because of sellers not really doing the work to understand what proper valuation is for their company. And then I would say another thing to think about, 2, 3, 4 years in advance, bring in some professionalized advisors, because understanding how to grow a company, understanding how to organize operations, how to scale, how to delegate responsibilities, and not have it all be just you, and all about you. You need to have a company that's developing a brand. You need to have a company that's able to scale. You need to have a company that has more than just you at the helm, so that you're not just selling a job. These are all things that professionals, like our partners, like others in the market that do, I would say, small business consulting, management consulting, merchant banking, and then M&A advisory. These are all the types of advisors and advisory firms that can really help companies grow and then get to a point where they can raise equity, get to a point where they can raise debt, get to a point where they can exit at a high multiple. I think those are a few different things, is that respect having the advisors, and then, just make sure that you have at least a vision, not a specific plan. That's not always necessary, to how you're going to get there, and then reverse engineer back from that. I think, these basic ideas are very important, but I especially do lean on the idea of bringing in experts that can help you in areas where you're not an expert. Most people are not experts in every area. Bring in people that are willing to come in and work with companies in the lower middle market, right? There are firms that are doing that, and you just have to look hard for them sometimes, because maybe they're not as available online, but we can help you with that. We like to look at clients as business partners long term. So we help them when they need to raise capital. We will refer them to a broker dealer in the lower middle market. We help them. We have a partner that does debt financing. We have M&A advisors. We have management consultants that focus on Main Street companies and then also moving up through the middle market. And then finally, we have funds and high net worth individuals that are always looking to get involved. Those people work with the broker dealers to either invest in or be a part of the funding for companies at different levels. So I really think the answer is to know when you don't know something. I guess that's like the final conclusion is to know when you don't know something and then to find good partners, either recruit them to work for your company or hire them. But it's very important that teamwork is really important. I played sports all my life. I've captained tennis teams. I've co-captained tennis teams. Teamwork is very important in life. And I would say that that's probably the key.
Well, knowing what you don't know, that's the key to Socratic wisdom, right? Know that you don't know.
Yeah, that's right. It's a good thing to have in life as well, not just when you're growing a company.
What's a big emotional mistake that sellers make? How do you help clients think clearly when there's a lot of money involved or pressure or ego or even, I don't know, a family business and there's lots of family expectations or whatnot? How do you cut through that clarity and help them not make emotional mistakes?
That's a great question, Justin. A great question. And it hits at a really critical point. As soon as you decide that you're going to transact with someone or another company or a fund, you're negotiating. Who's going to negotiate better? The person that feels all these kind of pressures and doesn't find a way to like kind of block them out as they're doing a deal, or the person that feels all these immense pressures, or the opposite. They're so excited by the money that they're going to get at the end of the deal that they give up everything else. You know, I understand it's really one of my favorite things is when we close a deal and someone becomes a millionaire for the first time. That's one of my favorite things, one of my favorite things. But having said that, if their eyes are getting too big, if their partner's eyes are getting too big, it'll sometimes end up costing them hundreds of thousands of dollars because they're so eager to get that exit event that they don't look at the negotiation as a proper investment of their time and money. I know some McDonald's M&A guys that do M&A deals for $7,500, but a lot of them are using forms and just changing names and putting in new dates, right?
And then running it through Claude.
I'm sorry?
And then running it through Claude or Chat GPT if they're pinching pennies.
Yes, and not really adding value. What you really want, I think, is someone that's going to care about your success in the long term. What do you want to do after you exit? What do you want to do? What's your next thing that you want to do? What's your vision for success? How do you visualize success? These are the kind of questions you ask people when you look at them more like a business partner than just a quick money hit. And service providers should not do that. I don't like this McDonald's, model because I think it does a real disservice to the market. But the point is, if you're looking for quality, top quality, and you don't want to pay $5 million for a transaction that might be less than that, and its enterprise value, you can come to firms like ours. And there's others that I can recommend. If you don't like ours, I can refer you to other law firms as well. We have a lot of really good, competent corporate M&A lawyers that are in this market, especially in New York, and who I know from across the country, for that matter, and in other countries. So there's a lot of really talented boutique and smaller law firms out there. I wouldn't go too fast. Don't rush things. Take a breather. Think things through. Sleep on it. And I would say that those kind of pauses, and again, knowing that you're in a negotiation, as soon as that you get that term sheet or LOI, you need to get competent counsel. And don't just look for the cheapest. Look for high quality that makes sense.
That's good. This might be related, but what does a great client do that makes your job easier, makes the outcome better? And what does a bad client do that makes even the best lawyer's job just that much harder?
Clients that think they know the law because of AI is probably the worst because they know enough to make it dangerous for themselves. And so that I would say is like probably the hardest thing right now is that people think because they can put something into AI that they They know all the nuances, know all the issues. Meanwhile, it's from people that have done hundreds of deals that can find where they're missing things, right? Where there's some gaps. I had a client recently bring me 137 open issues on 3 agreements that had been the product $125,000 had been paid to a law firm to draft them, and he came to me with 250 pages of AI analysis issues and otherwise. And I started off going along with him in terms of I took the issues that he found and then I found additional ones and I found ways to refine and make it closer to like what it actually should be than what AI was doing for him. Because again, he doesn't know how to really use AI in the way that a competent attorney does. So one of the biggest mistakes I think, and one of the things that makes clients tough to deal with are those that think they know but don't know. They think they know that but don't know. And then one other thing I would say is like, look, I respect your time. You respect my time. People that think that anytime someone else is working on something, it should take a minute, and whenever they work on it, it's going to take them an hour. But if you're doing it, it should take a minute. This absurd thing about the way that we underappreciate how much time things take to be done the right way, when other people are doing it versus when we're doing it. That's got to be a bias. That's probably one of the worst features of people, not just clients, but also attorneys and others that are in this market. And I've seen that with a lot of people too. Yeah, I think those are two pretty bad ones.
Gotcha. What's the sign that a business has outgrown its current legal setup? What are the yellow and or red flags?
It's tough for non-lawyers, I think, to see this as well, but I would say that if your gut feeling is that you really need to fix these things in order to achieve whatever it is that your business goal is, that's probably the right time. That's probably the right time. And then I would say if you're not sure about what you should even have in place, that's probably a time when you should come to a lawyer. And then I think it's more about that gut feeling, and then also secondly, not knowing. And I guess the final thing is if you're getting a lot of rejections from funders and you don't know why, if you're getting a lot of rejections from strategic partners, if people are not really coming to you, if you're having a hard time recruiting people, if you're doing well and you've grown, but you're having trouble getting to the next level, a lot of times these things have to do with some kind of legal cleanup. Business cleanup that's inherently also connected with the legal. I know of for example, I'm not going to say names, but there's a public company that is basically dormant and defunct because no one hired a competent lawyer. No one hired a good corporate lawyer for 3 years. And if that company if we were able to get that company in order, it could be sold for between $300,000, $600,000 to businesses that don't want to go through the IPO process, but they want to be public, right? But the clients are unwilling and don't really seem to want to clean up the company because they're sort of stuck in the past as looking back as to why this is in this situation in the first place, which was a M&A deal gone wrong, because there weren't lawyers really on their team helping them to do the M&A. So now they're in a situation where they need good corporate and competent M&A and capital markets lawyers. And the reason why they're in this pickle with an asset that they I think don't understand is valuable in the M&A world, in the corporate world, because it's public itself. If it was cleaned up, they're kind of stuck, and it's because they didn't have lawyers helping them in the beginning. By the way, not everyone has an understanding of when they need to have lawyers, so I'm not faulting these people. I'm simply saying that that's another example of when kind of this sort of thing happens. There's a lot of clients that come to us where they've done M&A deals without any lawyers.
Gotcha.
And it's fascinating to me. Yeah.
That
and we
makes
cleaned
that
it up.
makes sense, and it definitely is a red flag. Well, the tagline of my show has always been, "If you don't know your rights, you don't have any." And it's exactly this case. You need to know. You need to have competent legal counsel because you never know when something's going to blindside you. Like it really is a very important thing. Well, Tabber, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today. We've actually been going for I think almost an hour and a half at this point, so I want to be as respectful of your time as I can. Here in a minute, all I'm going to do is ask you my 3 closing questions. Question number 1: If I gave you a magic wand and you could change one thing about your law firm, what would you change and why? Number 2: If you can go back in time, meet young Tabber, give him some advice, what would it be? And number 3: If I gave you my magical pencil and you could change one law, it's almost out of graphite, so there's only enough to strike one law, edit one law, or add one law. What would you change, strike, edit, or add? While you're percolating on that, however, I'm going to jump back over and take a look at your site. As a reminder, I am talking with Tabber Benedict. He is the brains and face behind Benedict Advisors PLLC.com. This is his website right here. Nice little New York sky floor scene. I love the time-lapse videos. Those are always very engaging. So Benedict Advisors PLLC, and as always, we will have a link down below to his website. He has a contact form there, and if you've listened to the podcast, then you also have his email. If you're watching the podcast and you're paying attention, you can also suss it out there. I'm not going to give it to you again. But it's there. So if you are having a business development issue, I think Tabber would be a wonderful resource for you. And he does work with clients internationally even. So please feel free to reach out to him. Our final sponsor for today is Rank with News. When somebody Googles you, your business, your company, what do they actually see? Is it just your website? Or do they see real credibility, trust, and authority? Because the businesses that are getting chosen today, they're not just visible, they're validated. And that's where Rank with News comes in. Rank with News helps feature your business, your firm, in major media outlets like Business Insider, Yahoo News, Yahoo Finance, AP News, and more, so that when prospects look you up, they don't just find you, they find out that they trust you. This isn't about running more ads. It's about owning your reputation at the exact moment when it matters, when people are searching for you. Visit rankwith.news to see how this works. And I happen to know that Rank with News plays very nicely with SearchSift, where you're really controlling what people are seeing and controlling what's on page 1. So rankwithnews.com, or sorry, rankwithnews.com or rankwith.news. Either one will get you there. All right. So well, let's see. I give you a magic wand here, Tabber. And with this magic wand, you can change one thing about your firm. What's the one thing you would love to change about your firm if you could just wave a wand and have it happen?
Well, right now I'm in an interesting moment, and I think what's good about it is that I can tell you that the bottom line is that right now I'd really like to add another M&A and corporate partner, and the reason is because I'm in the process right now with partners, former KKR, Veritas Capital, and Prudential. And we're actually buying a broker-dealer, and we're next year going to be starting a boutique investment bank. I'm going to need to have someone like me who cares about quality and has the experience that I have, if possible, to be an M&A partner, so that on deals where I'm doing the investment banking, or on deals where we can do the law because I couldn't win the business in investment banking, right? Mm-hmm. They can work with me, and I can continue to oversee the investment bank because I'll be working also as a managing director, principal on certain deals, as well as the general counsel. So I guess it was, if I could wave my magic wand, I would duplicate me to help run this firm as I move into a different area.
Tabber and Tabber 2. All right. So without breaking the space-time continuum, you and I travel back in time, I don't know, 15 years or so. We meet young Tabber, maybe fresh out of law school, and you're able to go over and just whisper a piece of advice into your ear. What's the one piece of advice you would give to a younger version of yourself?
I know we joked about, buying Bitcoin or whatever. I would say that I would like to always think of myself as being ahead of the curve. So I think I would have pushed myself back then to be even more embracing. Even at the bigger firms, there's like a tendency to not care as much about technology in some ways because it's just given to you or whatever. I think I would have liked to have been further ahead of the curve in technology and in my focus, and maybe even specialized a little bit in technology companies. because of where things are now, because of the market and how exciting that market is right now, and because I now have that as one of our core values, that we will always integrate and use cutting edge technology to help ourselves and save clients money, and improve quality. So that's something that I wish I could have seen a little in advance. There is one person I know who has been working in AI and machine learning since the 1970s. So it's not unheard of. It was something, but it just wasn't understood the way that it is now. But I would just say technology in general, pushing myself more to be more and more aligned in that area and understanding it and finding ways to integrate it into my practice, even at those big law firms.
Gotcha. That makes sense. All right, final question. My pencil is almost out of magical graphite, but I have just enough to loan it to you and you can make one change. If I gave you my pencil, what change would you make and why?
I think that this may be controversial, although I'm not really sure why, except for like maybe about 1,000 people. I would like to have there be a law that institutes major campaign finance reform, such that all campaigns and political offices, campaigns for political office, are publicly funded and matching, so that we can get money out of politics. There's no real reason in my mind to have lobbyists and the powers that be rent or own elected officials. And so if I could make one law, it would be to do the thing that like turned me off to being in politics in the first place, back when I was at the White House and on the Hill interning, which would be to actually have campaign finance reform, but really, really attack it at the heart, so that way we the people have our government back. How about that? Maybe that's too idealistic. Yeah, it may never happen, but you said, hey, magic wand. So there we go.
That's a magical piece of graphite. You can make the change. It's either that or getting rid of income tax, right? That's the ideal. Well, Tabber, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with me and my listeners today. Really enjoyed the conversation. I think, again, we seem to vibe pretty well, which I like. I always like to let my guests have the final word. Is there any last words of wisdom, parting thoughts, advice that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I would just say that, a lot of the things that I found with my clients and in my career that hold us back are self-imposed barriers to higher levels of success and happiness. And, I would think about that and maybe reflect on a lot of the things that are in our head are focused on the future and on the past, and maybe encourage people to try to find ways to get more into the present. I think that would help in business, in life. And I'd be remiss if I didn't at least say something about it.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. That's totally fair. Well, again, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with me and my listeners today. This has been The Attorney Post. As always, I am your host, Justin West. I've been chatting with Tabber Benedict of the Benedict Advisors. That's Benedict Advisors PLLC.com. As always, though this podcast does talk about a host of legal issues, this podcast does not constitute legal advice. And if you have a legal issue, you should always seek the advice of a competent attorney in your area who focuses on the matters that you need help with. However, if you're in an M&A space or you need help with M&A deals, I think Tabber would be a wonderful resource for you. We've shared his website here. Also, if you were paying attention, you got his email as well. So please feel free to reach out to him. I think I can say confidently, he clearly has a good head on his shoulder, has a lot of experience in this area, and would be a wonderful resource for you. So please feel free to reach out to him. As far as the podcast goes, if you're listening to this on Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, etc., please feel free to like us, rate us, review, etc. If you're on YouTube, subscribe, share, leave a comment down below if you learned something new in this podcast today. But the most important thing you can do to help us grow this podcast is simply this. If you know someone that would benefit from the knowledge found in this particular episode, please share it with them. Help them to be equipped to know what they need to know, because as I always say, as the tagline of this show is, if you don't know your rights, you don't have any. Until next time, I'm your host, Justin West. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time.